This video is about zero and negative exponents, and the goal is I can simplify expressions with zero and negative exponents. Let's start with the review exercises. The directions state add or subtract the polynomial, write your answer in standard form. So for number 1, I notice that I'm adding the two polynomials, so I'm just going to combine like terms. So I have negative 7x squared plus a negative 9x squared, which is a negative 16x squared. Then I have just this one x term. I have nothing combined with it, so I'm going to write that next, plus 3x. And then the last step, I'm going to combine the two numbers. We have negative 4 and negative 5. Negative 4 plus a negative 5 is a negative 9. So my final answer is negative 16x squared plus 3x minus 9. Now for number 2, I notice I'm subtracting for this one. So I'm going to write my invisible 1 right here, and I'm going to distribute that to everything. So I'm going to rewrite this at the beginning. Negative x cubed minus 5x plus 2x squared. Negative 1 times 4x squared is a negative 4x squared. Negative 1 times a negative 8x is a positive 8x. And negative 1 times a positive 1 is a negative 1. Now I'm going to combine like terms starting with the highest degree. So I have negative x cubed, and there's nothing else to combine with that, so I'm going to write that first. Then I'm going to pick my next highest degree, which is my x squared. So I have a positive 2x squared and a negative 4x squared. That becomes a negative 2x squared. My next highest degree is my x term. So I have a negative 5x and a positive 8x, which becomes a positive 3x. And then my last term is just the negative 1, so I'm going to write minus 1. So my final answer is negative x cubed minus 2x squared plus 3x minus 1. Now let's talk about zero and negative exponents. So for zero exponents, for every non-zero number a, so when the base is not 0 and the exponent is 0, your answer will always be equal to 1. So here are some examples. So if I have 4 with the exponent of 0, my answer is going to be equal to 1. Let's try another one. If we have negative 3 to the 0 power, again, my answer is equal to 1. Let's try one more. What if I have 5.14 with an exponent of 0? Again, my answer is going to be 1. So anytime you have anything raised to the 0 power with that exponent being 0, your answer will always be equal to 1. Now let's talk about negative exponents. For every non-zero number a, an integer n, a to the negative n is equal to 1 over a to the n. So whenever you have a negative exponent, you're going to take the reciprocal of the power. So reciprocal means you flip it. So let me show you some examples. So for example, if we have 7 raised to the exponent of negative 3, if I take the reciprocal of that, so think of 7 as 7 over 1, I'm going to flip that and I'm going to do 1 over 7 with an exponent of 3. Let's try another problem. Now, what if we have 1 over negative 5 squared? Well, if I take the reciprocal of that power, so I flip it, now it's going to be, I'm sorry, it should be negative 5 to the negative 2 power. If I take the reciprocal of that, that's going to be negative 5 squared. Now let's try some examples. So the directions state find the simplified form of each expression. So for number 1, it's 8 raised to the negative 2 exponent. So first I'm going to rewrite this with a positive exponent. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of the power, which is 1 over 8 squared. And then I'm going to simplify this further. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. So your simplified answer is 1 over 64. Number 2. Now for this one, I have this negative sign on the outside. I'm going to keep that there. And first I'm going to worry about making this exponent right here positive. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of it. So I'm going to keep that negative on the outside. And I'm going to do 1 over negative 2 to the third power. Now I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to keep that negative out there still. And negative 2 to the third power is negative 2 times a negative 2 times a negative 2, which is a negative 8. So now I have two negatives, and two negatives make a positive. So think of that as negative 1 divided by a negative 8, which is equal to a positive 1/8. Number 3, I have negative 5 to the 0 power, and remember anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. For number 4, now this one is a little bit different because we have this negative on the outside. So I'm going to keep that negative on the outside, and then negative 6 to the 0 power, anything with an exponent of 0 is equal to 1. So it's equal to negative 1. Number 5. Now this one gets a little bit more tricky because there's more variables in here. Now remember, in order to simplify an expression, we need all of those negative exponents to turn positive. Now if we look at the top of the fraction, we have 8a to the negative third power. You need to think of the 8 and the a as two separate terms. So if I give the 8 an exponent, there would be a little invisible 1 right here. So that already has a positive exponent. So when I rewrite this, the 8 is going to stay on the top of the fraction. Now the a to the negative third power, that has a negative exponent, so I'm going to take the reciprocal of that. When I take the reciprocal of that, that's going to end up on the bottom of the fraction. So I'm going to write that on the bottom of the fraction. So if I write this out right here, that is equal to 1 over a to the third. So that's why it ends up on the bottom of the fraction. Now the 3 has an exponent of a 1, so that has a positive exponent, so it's going to stay on the bottom of the fraction. B squared, that has a positive exponent, so that's going to stay on the bottom of the fraction. And c to the negative fourth power, we need to make that exponent positive, so I'm going to take the reciprocal of that. Right now, it looks like this, 1 over c to the negative fourth power. When I make that exponent positive, it ends up becoming c to the fourth when I take the reciprocal. So that's going to end up on the top of the fraction. So now this is your final answer. And number 6. So I have 2 to the negative third power, so that has a negative exponent. So I want to write that with a positive exponent. So I'm going to write that power, and I'm going to take the reciprocal of it, which is going to be 1 over 2 to the third power, and that's going to become a positive exponent now. The x squared has a positive exponent, so that's going to stay at the top of the fraction. Y to the negative 7th, I'm going to take the reciprocal of that, so that's going to go into the denominator, y to the 7th. And then z to the 0 is equal to 1. So I don't have to put the 1 in, and that is my final answer then. So instead of writing 1x squared, I'm going to simplify and write it x squared. 2 to the third power, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And then y to the 7th. So that's my final answer, x squared over 8 times y to the 7th power.